The Alchemy of Adversity: How Black Women Are Turning Barriers into Business. When we think about success in America, we often imagine a clear path forward. Work hard, follow the rules, climb the ladder. But what happens when the ladder keeps moving? When the rules weren't written with you in mind, when working twice as hard gets you half as far? I recently had the profound privilege of interviewing Iesha Sanders, whose revolutionary insights have fundamentally challenged how I understand resilience, innovation, and the true nature of entrepreneurial spirit. Iesha isn't just researching the intersection of adversity and innovation, she's rewriting the narrative of what's possible when barriers become launching pads. Through her groundbreaking work with Black women entrepreneurs, she's illuminating pathways that transform systemic obstacles into catalysts for unprecedented success. Her compassionate yet data driven approach is quite literally changing how we understand human potential in the face of adversity. Here's something that might shock you. Despite facing persistent economic and social barriers, including recent surges in unemployment and significant corporate layoffs, Black women are starting businesses at 6 times the national average. 6 times. They are, in fact, the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs in the United States. Let that sink in for a moment. 6 times the national average. The conventional wisdom suggests that when faced with systemic obstacles, people retreat. They play it safe, they lower their expectations. But what Isha's research reveals turns this assumption completely on its head. What we're witnessing isn't retreat, it's revolution. This challenges everything we think we know about how adversity works. We've been taught that barriers hold people back, that discrimination dampens dreams, that rejection leads to retreat. But for many Black women entrepreneurs, the opposite is happening. The very walls designed to contain them are becoming the foundation stones of their empires. Consider Melissa Butler, founder of the Lip Bar. After noticing a profound lack of diverse, inclusive beauty products, Melissa left her secure Wall Street career to create a cosmetics line that would represent all women. When she appeared on Shark Tank, the investors didn't just reject her, they humiliated her, telling her on national television that her products would never sell. Imagine that moment: the lights, the cameras, the public rejection, the voices of authority declaring your dream dead on arrival. For most people, that would be the end. The credits would roll, the dream would die. But Melissa, she walked off that set with her head held high and her vision intact. She refused to accept their limited perspective as her final verdict. Instead, she leveraged digital marketing, built a fiercely loyal community, and focused on authentic representation. Today, the Lip Bar products are stocked in major retailers like Target and Walmart, generating millions in annual revenue. The rejection that was meant to end her became the fuel that propelled her forward. Or take Kim Lewis, co founder of Curl Mix. Kim and her husband created a hair care line specifically tailored for Black women's natural hair. They faced financial hardship, limited access to capital, and skepticism from investors, the triple threat that derails countless entrepreneurial dreams. But rather than giving up, they got creative. They utilized crowdfunding. They built a strong online community. They too appeared on Shark Tank, not just for potential investment, but for visibility. Within a year, Curl Mix achieved over $1 million in sales and became a model for Black owned e commerce success. The barriers that should have blocked them became the very blueprint for their innovation. And then there's Morgan DeBaun, founder of Blavity Inc. As a young Black professional, Morgan was frustrated by the lack of representation in mainstream media. Rather than simply complaining about it, she created the solution. Despite the difficulty accessing venture capital as a young Black woman, and let me tell you, those statistics are staggering, she bootstrapped her company, built a digital community, and strategically partnered with Black creators and investors. Today, Blavity reaches millions monthly, has acquired several brands, and secured millions in funding. The void that Morgan identified became the space where she built her empire. Do you see the pattern emerging here? In each case, these women didn't succeed despite the barriers they faced. They succeeded because of how those barriers transformed their approach to business. This is what Iesha Sanders calls the alchemy of adversity, the remarkable ability to transmute obstacles into opportunities, rejection into resilience, and barriers into breakthroughs. Now, I want to be absolutely clear about something. This is not some romanticized narrative about struggle. The systemic barriers that Black women face in business are real, persistent, and profoundly unjust. The fact that they must work harder, innovate more creatively, and persevere more tenaciously than their counterparts is not something to celebrate, it's something to change. But while we work toward that more equitable future, there's something powerful we can learn from how these entrepreneurs respond to adversity, because their approach reveals something fundamental about human potential that applies to all of us. When we examine these success stories more closely, three key insights emerge. First, adversity can be a powerful catalyst for innovation and entrepreneurship. When traditional paths are blocked, new ones must be forged. When existing products don't serve your needs, you create better ones. When institutions exclude you, you build your own. The friction of resistance often generates the spark of creation. Second, community and support networks are essential. None of these entrepreneurs succeeded in isolation. They built communities around their brands. They found mentors who believed in them. They connected with professional organizations and targeted events that provided resources and connections. In the absence of institutional support, they created their own support systems. And third, redefining success is a deeply personal journey. These women didn't measure their worth by conventional standards. They created new metrics, new models, new definitions of what it means to thrive. They embraced their own stories, including the difficult chapters, and used them to create something authentic and powerful. As Isha shared with me, your path may not look traditional, and that's not only okay, it's powerful. Embracing your own story and healing can create space for new opportunities and fulfillment. This redefinition of success is perhaps the most revolutionary act of all. Because when you stop measuring yourself against standards that weren't designed for you, you free yourself to create something truly original. Now, I want to pause here and acknowledge something important. The ability to transform adversity into advantage isn't equally distributed. It requires certain resources, inner resources like resilience and creativity, yes, but also external resources like social capital, education, and at least some financial stability. Not everyone facing systemic barriers has access to these resources. And that's why community support is so crucial. This is where organizations like Blavity's Afrotech, Black Girl Ventures, and Digital Undivided become so important. They provide the scaffolding that helps turn individual resilience into collective power. They create the conditions where the alchemy of adversity can occur. What's particularly fascinating about this phenomenon is how it challenges our fundamental assumptions about innovation. We tend to think that innovation flourishes under ideal conditions, with abundant resources, institutional support, and clear pathways to success. But what these Black women entrepreneurs demonstrate is that innovation often emerges precisely from constraint. When you can't follow the established playbook, you're forced to write a new one. When you can't rely on traditional investors, you pioneer new funding models. When mainstream markets ignore you, you create and dominate new ones. This isn't just relevant for entrepreneurs, it applies to all of us who face barriers in our personal and professional lives. The question becomes, how might we approach our own obstacles, not just as things to overcome, but as potential catalysts for creativity and growth? What if the very thing that seems to be blocking your path is actually redirecting you toward a better one? What if your greatest limitation could become your most distinctive strength? What if the experience that broke you open is the one that makes room for new light to enter? These aren't just philosophical questions, they're practical ones that can transform how we navigate challenges. So I ask you today, what barriers are you facing that might contain hidden opportunities? What rejection might be redirecting you to something better? What void in your life or industry might be the exact space where you're meant to build something revolutionary? The alchemy of adversity isn't reserved for a select few. It's available to anyone willing to see differently, to anyone brave enough to transmute pain into purpose, to anyone bold enough to redefine success on their own terms. I challenge you to look at one obstacle in your life through this new lens, not with toxic positivity that denies the difficulty, but with strategic creativity that asks, what might this barrier be teaching me? What innovation might it be demanding of me? What community might I need to build around me to transform this challenge? Because the most powerful revolutions don't just change systems, they change how we see ourselves within those systems. They transform not just what we do, but how we do it. And that transformation begins with you, right here, right now. The world doesn't need more people who simply accept limitations. It needs more alchemists who can turn lead into gold, more visionaries who can see beyond barriers to possibilities, more innovators who understand that sometimes the most powerful breakthroughs emerge from our deepest breakdowns. Be one of them. Start today. Thank you